Hey, I am so happy you're joining me for the next book review. I just had an incredible conversation with Brian Reisinger, the author of Land Rich, Cash Poor. If you're a reader and you want a book that's going to change your life, check this out. Brian wrote this book, and it is a history of farming in the United States from the 1920s up until the current day. And throughout this book, the thesis, the point of the book is he shares that at various times throughout history, farmers have got left behind accidentally, let's hope not purposely, but he looks at the various reasons and things that have happened in society that have impacted farmers, how farmers were negatively impacted, positively impacted, where farmers got left behind, and why the family farm numbers have been on a steady, pretty much drop since the 1920s. 1930s, somewhere in there, when we had the highest number of farms in the United States. Parallel the history and the story for Canada or the countries you live in. But the beautiful thing about this, three things I love here. He shares the history in a way that's easy to read and digestible. It's just the perfect amount of history. And history we don't even know. As farmers, we kind of think we know farming and what has happened and what has shaped previous generations, the good times, the bad times. I was sitting here going, I didn't know that. Things like the Great Depression, we thought that was the start of the hard times. Turns out it started in the 1920s. He talks about the movement and farm kids leaving the farm. Obviously, farm families were too big. You didn't need 14 kids farming, you needed one or two. So he talks about that trend, and then he talks about technology, political, environmental, and the social causes that have affected farms and how farms have got left behind. So a beautiful history that I'm going to guess 99% of the farming population do not know about. And it's all this stuff that has impacted our family farms. Of course, many of us know about the 1980s and farm crisis. Most of us, I didn't know what led to the 1980s farm crisis truly happening. He gives a detailed account, 1920s right till today. But you want to know the most beautiful part about this book. It's not just a history book because those can be dry and hard to read. This is Brian's family story weaved in. So he'll give some history about the time. Let's call it the 1920s. And he'll talk about what was shaping North America at that time, what was going on, and then what was going on in the farm world. And then he'll do a nice couple pages of history, and then he'll go zoom in to his family, starting, I think, with his great grandparents that came over and settled in Wisconsin area. So then he'll tell the tale of the family and what was happening in North America, in the world, in the farming community. Then he zoomed right into that family farmhouse in Wisconsin in the rugged hills. And then he would share the story of his family and the next generation. And then it was just this beautiful account of the 1920s from when his relatives came over from Europe till today. And he'll weave in his family story. And while this is Brian's family story, I was sitting here like the best of the movies that you've ever watched, going, oh my goodness, I was just right into their story and just following along like they were characters, obviously, in a book, but you could just feel their pain. And not only were you getting great history lesson about our industry, you were hearing about Brian's family. But while you're reading these pages, you're thinking of your great grandparents and grandparents and parents and where we're at today. And while it's a story of the history of farming in North America, US, and Brian's family, this is really a parallel to the history of our farm families. And I've thought a lot about what my grandparents and great grandparents went through, and my parents, all the family that has farmed before me. I've thought a little bit about what they went through, and you can realize that it was hard times and no technology and Great Depression and poverty and starvation and all the stories that we've heard. And you can relate, sort of, in a way we probably can and can't, sitting here in 2024. But the vividness of the stories, the relationships, the humanness, the drinking problems, the injuries, you start to bring alive the stories of your previous generation. And while it's a history lesson on our ancestors and the various things that they've gone through. And like I said, while I've thought about it, just the vividness of each of the pages as he talks about his great grandparents and grandparents and parents, it just brings to life some of the triumphs and struggles that our family went through and how we sit here today. And of course, each of our generations, we have struggles in our farms, in our financials, in the economy. Each generation has gone through different things. It's just a beautiful way to think about the history of farming in North America and understanding our family in a way. For me, anyways, this is what I took from this book. You understand family, great grandparents, grandparents, in a way that you probably did not before you started reading this book. This book just hits different. It just kind of captures your soul and in times just kind of gives you that gut feeling that is just so real and even relatable to our present struggles nowadays. Brian talks about his dad having to sell cows and mental health struggles and thoughts of suicide. And he talks about all of this in the interview we did together. But if you like to read and you want a book that will change the way you look at the history of farming in the US, I call it North America because Canada would parallel this. I think a lot of the other countries would parallel this. If you want a book that'll help you look at farming and the history of farming differently, if you want a book that will help you appreciate your ancestors and their struggles and wins in a way that you didn't before opening this book, and if you want a book literally that'll change the way you look at your farming operation now, I'd suggest you guys get this book. Don't worry, I don't get any commissions from this book. I just have started sharing books that have changed my life on the Impact Farming Show. Because as you guys know, I'm here to bring people and ideas that'll impact your farming operation. And while financial books are great and mental health and all these episodes I bring, this weaves together history, family, financial, all of these subjects in a beautiful way. And I probably made Brian uncomfortable with the number of compliments I gave him because this book in itself is a legacy that he wrote and makes you really truly cherish your farm family and want to talk to any of your relatives that are still alive and capture some of these details if you haven't. That is my takeaway. I hope if you guys like reading that you grab this book, whether it's Audible or hard copy. I'll put links in the show notes. If you buy it and you read it, let me know what you think. This has just hit different. Just magical. The way he weaves together history and his family. I don't think you guys will regret buying this book. So if you want a book that will change the way you look at farming, grab this one. You won't regret it. See you guys on the next episode and the next book review. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.